Welcome everyone to this week's episode, Rental Roundtable 19, titled Deciphering Damage Waivers. I've got a friend of mine, Damian Brooks, here. Damian is from SCIS. He knows the ins and outs of all things insurance, and he's here to talk to you about damage waivers and rental protection plans. So we've got a great episode. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Damien just to give a quick little intro to himself and what he does.
Thanks, Court, and I really appreciate you inviting me to come on the program. My name's Damian Brooks. My position is the Director of Insurance for Specialty Equipment Insurance Services. I've been in the insurance business since 1996. Boy, it's been a long time now. And have the gray hair to prove it. My career has focused on really the intersection of the insurance world and the dealership world. And so I worked a lot with the automotive side, and then a number of years ago, I was hired by Specialty Equipment Insurance Services, and for the past 3 years, I've been working specifically with equipment dealers.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the intro, Damien. Guys, just as a reminder, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat. These things are fun and interactive. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in and we'll get to them. But Damien, just let's go ahead and kick it off. As mentioned, we're going to talk about damage waivers. Would love to just kind of hear your high level. How do you explain what damage waivers are in the rental industry and what purpose they serve?
Right. So the damage waiver is actually something that a rental company sells to their customer, and it's a contractual agreement. It says to the customer, if there's damage that's done to the unit while it is in your possession, that we won't come after you for that damage. And I want to stress that it's not insurance. Insurance is something that's very different. It requires a licensed representative to sell it. The damage waiver, like I said, is just an agreement between the renting company and the renter that the renter won't be held responsible financially for damage that's done to the unit while it's in their possession.
I definitely could not have said it better myself. But I need to work on it. So I love that you talked about sort of what they are, but also what they are not. Can you go into a little bit of detail just of the different approaches that you see dealerships taking, right? I know that you can approach a damage waiver program in any number of ways. So would love to hear kind of the different options or common ways that you see it.
Right. So there's a full spectrum of risk management that goes around this from rental companies and dealerships. At one end is the rental company or the dealership that says, we're not going to offer a waiver whatsoever. You have to provide us as the renter with proof of insurance. And that basically avoids the risk altogether. You're saying that the renter's insurance company needs to be responsible for this, and the renter needs to be responsible for it, and you're not offering a waiver. At the very other end of the spectrum is the rental company that says, we're going to offer our customers a waiver and we're going to accept that risk ourselves. So we're basically going to pay for losses out of whatever funds we bring in, whatever revenue we bring in for the waiver. And that's essentially a self-insured program. And then in between those two extremes, you have different approaches by different dealerships. So some will say, we'd prefer you to provide us with proof of insurance, but if you don't, we do have a waiver that's available. We're going to sell it to you for X, and we do so few of them that we're going to take on the risk. Or we're not comfortable with insurance, or we don't know how to access the insurance market for this sort of exposure. We get others where they say, we're going to put a waiver on absolutely everything unless the customer tells us that they don't want it. And we're only going to accept insurance certificates in lieu of a waiver from customers where we believe that they're sizable enough and responsible enough that we think that that insurance certificate is going to be worthwhile to us. So I have customers where the only renters where they won't put a waiver on it will be like governments, municipalities, school boards, something that's sizable enough that we know that that insurance is going to be solid and that they can financially meet their obligations. Most of my customers have got some sort of a balance between the two that's more closer to the middle, where they say, we're going to offer you a waiver. We're going to offer it every single time because that's best practice. And if you tell us that you don't want to, and that you have your own insurance on that, at that point, we'll accept the certificate and take a look at it and make sure that it works for us. But that's the median approach. What we do on our side of this is we help rental companies who are on that spectrum somewhere insure that risk so that they're not bearing the full financial responsibility themselves. So if a rental company is selling a waiver and they want to make sure that they're not on the hook for the entire cost of that unit if there's a loss, they can insure that with us as well, and that way they've got their exposure to loss insured in the background. The idea being that the rental company buys insurance and sells a waiver to their customer. Those are two separate transactions.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think you you got into it a little bit. I mean, I think the benefit to rental companies is pretty obvious, right? It's a risk mitigation plan. It's also, for a lot of companies, an additional revenue stream as well. Do you mind going into a little bit more detail about just, the benefit to the renters? Because I think there's maybe some misconceptions about damage waiver policies, about who they're good for, and who's a good fit. So, do you mind just going into a little bit more detail about the benefits to renters?
I think there are a couple of benefits to renters. One is it presses the easy button for them. They don't, they can make sure that they're covered off at the time of purchase. They don't need to go back to their agent or their broker and have the rental company added on as an additional insured, provide a certificate of insurance. They don't need to make sure that they're carrying or increase their limits if they don't have enough insurance to cover off damage to the unit. If you've got a $100,000 limit on your on rented equipment on your policy, on your insurance policy as a renter, and you want to rent a $200,000 piece of equipment, you got to buy more insurance for that if you want that certificate to be worthwhile and be accepted by the rental company. So for the renter, I think that there are a whole number of issues around that. And quite honestly, being able to just turn the unit back in no matter what's happened at the end of the rental and say, hey, I bought the waiver, you guys deal with it, I think is way better. If a renter has the equipment covered under their own insurance policy, then if there's some sort of a loss, they now need to make a claim and go through the whole process of having the claim adjusted and working with their insurance company to make sure that the rental company is made whole. And that can be a real, it takes time away from the rest of their business. If they're a construction company, they're not doing construction while they're working on getting a claim adjusted. The other thing for the renter is that when you make a claim on your own insurance policy, your premiums are likely going to go up the next year, especially if it's a significant claim on an expensive piece of equipment. I don't know too many landscaping companies, construction companies, farming organizations, any sort of a commercial renter who wants their insurance premium to go up next year because they made a claim on a piece of equipment that they didn't even own. So from my standpoint as a renter, far better to segregate this risk off onto the damage waiver and pay for it that way, And that way, that risk is isolated. If something happens to that unit, it's not going to affect the rest of the business. On the flip side, there are a couple of things that I didn't mention in terms of the rental company where it's a benefit. Much as we definitely don't want to, much as the renting company, the renter doesn't want to have this loss on their own insurance policy. The rental company doesn't necessarily want to go through a third-party insurance company to make a claim on a piece of equipment that they want to get fixed and back out making money for them again. So from that standpoint, as a rental company, you want to be making that claim within a specialized rental policy where that insurance company has a vested interest in taking care of you because you're their customer, as opposed to the renter's insurance company, who may or may not want to take care of you quickly and get your machine back out working again. So I think that there's a real benefit there, as well as making sure that you've got a little bit more control, that that the insurance meets your needs, so that you don't have to vet the insurance company or the coverages on an insurance certificate, and you can make some money on it as well, because the amount that you sell your waiver for to the customer is not, it can be more than what you're charged by the insurance company to insure your risk. You can make money on the spread.
Well said. I think that's a super common misconception, right? Is that it's just, because for situations in which people don't have insurance. No, it's protecting everyone, right? And again, it's simplifying your business. We do have a question in the chat. James says, Damien made the comment, the benefits to the renter of being able to return a piece of equipment regardless of what happened to it if they had purchased the damage waiver. Do damage waivers usually have exclusions, in particular misuse and abuse?
Yes, and that's a really good point. When I said whatever happened to it, that was an exaggeration.
Non-lawyer, right?
Right. Yeah, that was me trying to simplify things. Absolutely, I think that it's best practice to have exclusions in the waiver that you sell to the client. Generally speaking, we feel that best practice is to mirror your insurance policy as much as possible. So something like misuse and abuse is going to be in an exclusion in the insurance policy that backs your waiver program for most companies, and you want to make sure that that's in the exclusions that get passed on to your customer in your waiver as well.
Yeah, and there's kind of exclusions for everything, right? Like, I know that one of the things that we talked about was, there's certain equipment that is not meant to be used underground, right? And but there are also, things that are acceptable use, right? So we talked about a bucket on an excavator is pretty worthless if you can't get that thing underground, right? So that's an accepted use. But there are exclusions such as you should not be taking, a skid steer through in a 100-foot deep mine, right? Or something like that.
Right. And I when I say that most of the exclusions should be mirrored in the waiver, there are some that wouldn't. So, for example, in the insurance policy that our company offers to the market, there's no exclusion for illegal acts that the renter does with the machine. However, it would. So we're making sure that the rental company is properly insured for that. However, the rental company doesn't want to mirror that part of the wording in their language. They would like the renter, if they're doing something illegal, to criminal activity, to be responsible for it and not be able to take advantage of the situation. So one of the things that we do is make sure that we're providing that list of coverages and exclusions in their insurance policy to the renting company, and they can then pass that along to their lawyer, make sure that the waiver gets written properly, and that they feel comfortable with the amount of risk they're taking.
Yeah, that's a really good point. David, you talked a little bit about best practices, like having your waiver match, say your insurance policy. What other best practices do you see, your customers putting into place, to get their damage waiver program off on the right foot?
Well, I think again, making sure right at the very beginning to understand what sort of risk you want to take. Look, if we're talking about a rental company that is bringing in millions of dollars a year in damage waiver revenue, and they have on average $100,000 worth of losses in a year, that company doesn't necessarily need an insurance policy, and they can decide to do whatever it is that they want. They're large enough and diverse enough in terms of their exposure that they can self-insure something like this. But for a small to mid-sized company, they definitely want to make sure that there's something in the background to mitigate their risk. And that's really, really important because, you can take in, if you're taking in $100,000 in waiver premium waiver revenue in a year, one loss can wipe that out. So making sure that there's some sort of insurance standing in behind helps you to manage your risk. So I think first and foremost is deciding how much risk you're willing to take and what's appropriate for the size of your organization as well. The second thing is again making sure that your waiver is designed properly and that you've got it covering only the things that you want. And then the third thing is don't prejudge who's going to take the waiver and who isn't. What we're seeing in the market is that more and more large companies, large renters, are choosing to take a waiver, and this can be surprising to rental companies where a customer like that has provided their own insurance certificate in the past, but these customers are looking at exactly what I said at the beginning. Do we want to have this exposure on our policy, or do we want to put it back on the rental company? And there's definitely been a shift in the market in the past couple of years towards utilizing the waivers more and more, and bigger and bigger companies doing it. So best practice from my standpoint is that the rental companies are offering it to every single customer. And many of the companies that I deal with are actually just including it in the pricing. Here's your rental contract. It's going to be X dollars. By the way, that includes your damage waiver coverage. And at that point, if a customer says, "Well, no, I don't want that," the person on the desk can say, "Oh, well, that's fine. We can take that out for you. I just wanted to make sure that we included it because most of our customers are taking it these days. They don't want to have their own insurance premiums go up next year if they have to make a claim on a piece of equipment that they don't even own. But we can take that out for you, Mr. Customer, if you would like us to." Well, wait a second. How much is it again? And so just offering it to 100% of the customers, 100% of the time, and not prejudging can help solidify your damage waiver business and the revenue that goes along with that, as well as helping to mitigate your own exposure.
I love that. We've got another couple of chats here, or questions in the chat. Someone said, do most rental companies cap the amount of loss that the damage waiver will cover? And if so, what is the cap amount?
I don't see that. I don't see, generally speaking, a cap on it. What you would want to make sure of, though, is that if you've got that if you're taking a look at the customer's own insurance on this, that if you're not selling a waiver, that you're just looking at their own insurance, that they have a sufficient limit to cover off all the damage to your unit. So if you're renting them a $250,000 unit, they need to have $250,000 worth of coverage for rented equipment. In terms of a cap on the waiver, I haven't seen that. What I have seen is different approaches to deductibles. So the renting company might have a $2,500 or a $5,000 deductible per occurrence on their coverage for these units while they're out on rent. But the renting company might not pass that full amount on to their own customers. So if you've got, a rancher who is just renting a piece of equipment to clear a brush out, they probably don't want to take the first $5,000 of risk on that piece of machinery. And so the renting company might say, hey, you're responsible for the first 1,000 on it, or the first 500. I have customers where they know all of their, it's a dealership that does rentals, and they know their customers very, very well. A lot of those customers have been dealing with the same dealership for 20 years. And the owner of that company shakes hands with everybody that walks in the door and tells them, look, I have a $2,500 deductible. In the event that there's a loss, you're going to cover half of it, and I'm going to cover half. And so, they've decided to split the difference. There are others that say, no, it means that you have no deductible, that you don't have to cover anything off as long as it's within the terms and conditions of our waiver. I tend to not like that approach nearly as well, because it takes responsibility away from the renter to take care of your equipment. I want the renter to have a little bit of skin in the game, so that they're just more careful with the piece of equipment while they're renting. So I tend to like to have a little bit of a deductible put in there, but those are the different approaches.
I appreciate that. We've got another one here, and this is interesting. It says, I see some of the big players, United, Herc, etc., switch their verbiage to rental protection plan rather than damage waiver. Is there a reason for this? Is this still just a damage waiver with a different name?
Yeah, it's marketing. And hey, I mean, maybe it's smart marketing. I don't know. I think that a protection plan is probably more appropriate to individual consumers. Maybe in the car market, if you're renting a car. But I think that most commercial renters are savvy enough to be able to see through that pretty. But I mean, that's their business, and it's up to them how they want to market it. I think damage waivers reasonably well accepted, and at least it's understood, so that when you talk protection plan, are you talking about warranty, or are you talking damage waiver, or are you talking an insurance policy? We don't know. Damage waiver, I think, is pretty well understood in the marketplace, and so my preference would be to stick with that. But that's that and $1.25 will get you a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Damien, I'll shift gears a little bit here. We've talked about kind of a lot of the opportunity that things have created, right? But we've also, offering a damage waiver can create what you have referred to as moral hazard sometimes, right? What are the types? Is there any sort of best practices for coming up with a risk avoidance strategy, right? So, let's say someone launches their damage waiver program, and actually they're finding that, people are damaging things a little bit more. What have you helped customers? Have you worked hand in hand with customers to help them kind of get back on track when you've noticed sort of some things going awry within their program?
Yeah, I think that's there's not necessarily science behind that one. That's not one where you can just work the numbers and make it work. A lot of that comes down to feel and to experience. What I will say is that 95% of the renting companies that I do business with are fantastic at doing that on their own. They know who they want to rent to, who their target market is. They get a real sense very quickly whether or not they want to entrust this individual with $100,000, $200,000 piece of equipment or not. Because they've got a significant, rental companies have significant investment in that equipment. It's probably the single biggest cost that they have, and they don't want to give it to just anybody to take out, regardless of whether or not they've sold a waiver, and regardless of whether or not there's insurance on it. It's a hassle to have something like that. Have a $200,000 piece of equipment not available to rent while it waits to get fixed or replaced. So I think that most rental companies are very, very good at that. The ones that are deciding that they want to try and work some sort of an angle on this, that they want to try and get more out of the insurance policy, backing them up than they are putting into it. Insurance companies are pretty good at sniffing that stuff out, and they have no problems. Most insurance companies, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Most insurance companies don't have a problem paying losses, but they want to make sure that they're paying fair losses, and that they're not being taken advantage of. And just like any other business, they're only going to lose money on a customer for so long before they change the terms. So if you have a renter that is taking advantage of your insurance, of their waivers, then at that point, maybe it's time to change the terms of the waiver for that individual customer, or to tell that customer that the waiver is not available to them anymore, that they need to provide their own insurance. Because on the flip side, if you end up as a renting company not managing that risk really, really well, then your insurance terms that back up your waiver are going to change as well. And we want to make sure that that you're as a renting company, you want to make sure that your coverage is as tight and painless and inexpensive as possible, and that means that you have to manage it.
Wow.
Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Well said again. It's hard to make insurance sound, crisp like that, but I think that.
You know what? I think that it's really important to remember what the purpose of insurance is, Court. And that is to mitigate risk. You're in business. You're taking enough entrepreneurial risk. There's some, and that's a pile of exposure just on, do I get customers? Do I maintain my costs? All the rest of that stuff. But the risk for accidental loss, that's something that you can farm off to somebody else, to an insurance company. And it's important to be able to understand how to do that so that you're free to go out and pursue the business the way that you want to. You don't want to be on a team that only plays offense and never thinks about defense at all. And insurance is just, it's a little bit of defense. Let's think about a little bit of defense on this. So I think that that's really, really important. The other thing to remember is that the basic idea of insurance is that everybody throws money into a pot at the beginning of the year. And then if something bad happens to you, at that point, you get to take a little bit out. Well, if everybody's being responsible, who's in that pool, who's throwing money into that pot, if everybody's being responsible and throwing, their fair amount in and not trying to take too much out in terms of claims costs that are unreasonable, then at that point, the pool works pretty well. But when you have one or two players in that pool that aren't doing it right, that are trying to take advantage of the system one way or the other, well, somebody's got to pay for that. And what it ends up being is all the other honest rental companies, all the other honest dealers, all the other honest people who are in that pool end up subsidizing the dishonest ones. So we really try and make sure that we're as a provider, we try and make sure that our pool is as clean as possible and that we're doing business with really honest businesses. And as an insurance purchaser, you should be trying to make sure that you're in the cleanest pool that you possibly can be. You should be happy when when your provider is making sure that there are procedures and guardrails in place to make sure that nobody else can take advantage of the system, because that will, as an honest business person, that'll keep your own costs down.
Great point. Jamie, we've got another one here, and it says, should we require a damage waiver to be mandatory if we are renting earth-moving equipment to homeowners without insurance plans?
Yes. That's a really, really easy one. Yes. Look, if your customer doesn't have insurance, you shouldn't rent it to them without a waiver. And most homeowners won't have the proper type of insurance. A homeowner's policy is generally not going to be good enough to cover the type of equipment that you're renting to them. So yeah, I'd make, personally, if I was sitting in your shoes, I would absolutely make In fact, anybody that can't provide proper certificate of insurance, the default should be you're either giving us, the proper certificate or like something that's valid. I have to like the insurance company. I have to think that the coverages are right. And I mean, one thing that rental companies need to take a look at as well on that certificate is what's the company's, like your renter's deductible. If you've got let's say you've got a small landscaping company that wants to rent a sizable piece of equipment from you, and their insurance company says, sure, we can give you the proper amount of coverage, but we've got but we're going to have a $20,000 deductible on that piece of equipment. Well, if you don't think that the renter can cover that size of deductible, it just doesn't pass your smell test, then you can't accept that you can't accept that insurance. The idea here is that it's not just them giving you a piece of paper. There has to be the right coverage behind that paper, and there has to be the financial backing that goes along with that. So making sure that, you're good with the insurance company that's doing it, that it's not some, fly-by-night insurer that you've never heard of, and making sure that the renter can cover you feel that the renter can cover the cost of their deductible is equally important than just getting insurance in the first place. That was a long answer to a question that really comes down to a yes. Yes, you should make sure that they have a waiver if they can't provide insurance. Absolutely.
Damien, I want to shift gears a little bit here. We've talked about damage waiver programs, right? Or as some call rental protection plans, whatever you want to list it as, right? Can you tell us a little bit about SCIS and what makes y'all unique and what your sort of unique value proposition is?
Yeah, thanks. So specialty equipment insurance services is first of all, we're a division of a much larger company called the Aminta Group. Aminta Group handles, close to $4 billion worth of premiums worldwide. We're a sizable company. SCIS operates very entrepreneurially within that, though. So we're very agile within a large group. So we have the financial benefits of being part of a large group, but also we're able to respond to our customers and offer personal service on our products very easily. Specialty Equipment Insurance Services does business with rental companies and with dealerships in what would be considered the financial and insurance marketplace. So we offer extended warranties, we offer product damage insurance to customers. We offer rental damage waiver insurance to rental companies. The amount of expertise that's required to do business with an equipment rental company, it's because it's not the same as cars. It's not the same as, cell phones or anything else that it is that you're renting. You want to make sure that you're doing business with a specialist on this, somebody that understands your industry specifically. Because if, in the event that there is a claim, you don't want some auto adjuster coming out and taking a look at your back. I mean, they're not going to know thing one about how to make sure that gets taken. So we are specialists in the heavy equipment side of things, agricultural equipment, construction equipment, and materials handling equipment. And we know your business. We have state-of-the-art systems in terms of reporting, and we work with partners like Quipley that are high-end, that are leading the market out there and trying to make sure that we're putting together good integrated solutions for rental companies to make their business better. And that's really the focus, is how can we help you make your business easier, safer, more profitable? And those, if we can do that, I think we're providing value and doing a good job on that. And the other thing is, again, I've been in the insurance business for going on 30 years now. And insurance is just a promise that when something bad happens to you, we'll be there for you. And anybody can make a promise. The question is who keeps it. And I'm really, really proud of how we keep our promises when something bad happens. Our claim service is second to none. claim service, I'll 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 go toe to toe with anybody in terms of our claim service. And that's really where the rubber meets. There are companies out there that might sell the coverage a little, a nickel cheaper, but at the end of the day, you want somebody that's going to stand behind their, the promise that they made to you, and we're very, very good at that. And I'll brag on that all day long.
You've been consistent in that talk track since we've gotten to know each other. I made it an insurance joke here, here and there to you, but I think one thing you've always been very firm on was we like paying claims because the business is a promise, and this is us fulfilling a promise. And I think that's just again, if there's one thing that you have, consistently said to me over the last few months has been that. So, I think that's a really cool sort of value proposition for yourself. Now, putting on your insurance sort of consultant hat and not SCIS representative, when folks out there are evaluating an insurance provider, right, for call it their RDW program, right? What are some things that they should kind of look out for, or ways that they can quickly and easily vet, a potential provider of insurance, provider of this type of insurance product?
Right. So I think that there are a couple of different elements. Obviously, the first is, is it a solid insurance company, and do they pay claims? The company that we use is CNA. CNA is one of the top 10 insurance companies in North America. They've got $55 billion in assets. They're A plus rated by all the different rating agencies, like financial strength rating agencies out there. These guys know what they're doing. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with a solid insurance company. You want to make sure that you're dealing with a solid intermediary as well. So Specialty Equipment Insurance Services is essentially acts as the program manager or the agent on this, and we're the ones that are the experts in this particular space. So where you think of the insurance company as the financial backing, the ones that are actually out there with you, making sure that you're taken care of, is the MGA or the agency that's actually working. And I think it's important to make sure that you're dealing with somebody that understands your space and is willing to offer good personal service. You can call me as opposed to calling it. And, we really pride ourselves. I think a third thing to take a look at when you're evaluating who your provider is going to be is ease of doing business. And this is one where it's not just the easiest that's going to be the best. You want to make sure that the processes and procedures that are in place are good enough to safeguard the integrity of the pool that you're in, the program that you're a part of. So there needs to be some sort of process in there, but that the process isn't so onerous that it's going to slow your business down. So, for example, our program has a requirement that you register every rental. Well, that registration takes, it's 4 pieces of information. Who are you renting it to? How much are you renting it for? What's the start date? What's the end date? And that takes about 15 seconds. It's important to be able to do it so that we know that the waiver has actually been sold to that client, and that the procedures have been followed. But it's not so onerous that it's going to bury your people in paperwork as they're trying to get the rental done and get the customer out the door. So I think having that ease of doing business, strike the proper balance is really important. And last is cost. That's always going to be issue, and you do need to evaluate your upfront costs. But just as in anything, the way that you should evaluate cost is how much value am I getting for the dollar that I'm spending, and I think that that's a really important factor to take.
Yeah, good point. You mentioned one thing actually at the beginning. You said CNA is AAA rated or something. Is there like an objective sort of place that you can look to vet some of these, sort of providers, like you said? So you said like, do they pay claims? Well, you know, that's as a regular consumer, I feel that I probably don't have access to being able to like search for that information. Is there a way that you can kind of sort of do your homework on, sort of the companies there?
I think talking to the provider is really the best way in terms of do they pay claims. I think that's really the best way. Insurance professionals, especially the intermediaries that you're dealing with, your agent, your broker, they're going to be able to tell you who pays claims and who doesn't, because they've got a sense they're in the industry. So that's probably the easiest way to determine that. In terms of financial strength, there are a number of different rating agencies. Standard, which is S&P, Fitch's is another one, FITCH apostrophe S, and AM Best are three of the top ones out there. I guess Moody's as well would be a fourth. And they have different rating mechanisms, but anybody that's in the A to A plus range is generally going to be a good risk. As soon as you start sliding down into the Bs, at that point, there may be good reasons to use them, but the company's not going to be considered as solid. And in an insurance company, you want to be able to count on it. You want to be able to count on the financial strength.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The S&P, Fitch's, AM Best, and Moody's. I appreciate that. So one other thing that we, briefly talked a little bit about at the beginning was just, all right, let's say you leave that, one of our viewers is going to leave this podcast and say, I want to stand up a damage waiver program. Like, what do I do, right? What are the things that need to take place? Give them kind of the starter kit, if you will, for, getting started here.
Do I get to say, call me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the one of the keys is going to be talking to somebody that's done it before, that can help you through the process and walk you through and wants to give you that personal level of service. And I can speak for myself and say that Specialty Equipment Insurance Services absolutely wants to help you do that. That we want to be your turnkey, white glove, concierge level service provider in this space. But again, we can go through that same set of steps that we talked about earlier. Figure out how much exposure you're willing to take and what you want to take, and then just have a general idea around that, and then be willing to take advice on that. If you're talking to an expert who says, "Hey, you might want to consider this. This is what companies that are in your size range in your marketplace generally do," and then you get to make your own decisions. Take the advice, but remember that the decision point is actually yours. And then the second thing is to again, for most companies out there, you're going to want to have insurance standing behind your waiver program, and you'd want to get a quote on and understand what that process looks like, what the administrative burden is going to be around running it, and what the costs are going to be. And then at that point, it's a matter of taking a look at, okay, we've decided on this provider. Now we want to make sure that our waiver matches up with what the coverages are that we have. And that's where you end up getting legal involved. And again, we can give help with best practices around that. And then it's a matter of launching it and running it. And you want to make sure that, again, you all are in the sales business just as much as anybody else. The hallmark of a professional salesperson is how they deliver on what they said they were going to do and how they service you after they've got you. So make sure that the companies that you're dealing with on this are willing to continue to give you good service. I have clients that call me up and say, Damien, I know this isn't even a waiver customer, but can you take a look at the certificate of insurance for me? I'm not sure if this actually meets our requirements or not. Sure, absolutely, we can do that. And we want to do that because we know that that's the sort of service that's going to keep customers coming back to us. So making sure that you're going to get continuous service as opposed to somebody that walks in, sells you something, and then walks away and says, hey, you're on your own now, call our 1-800 number, go through our web portal, don't talk to me. I think that's really important. And then again, same thing happens on the claim side. You want somebody that's going to advocate for you when the claim is in a gray area. If there's something that doesn't fall into either the black of it's not covered or the white of it's absolutely covered, there are still shades of gray in the insurance world, and making sure that you have somebody that'll advocate for you is going to be pretty important. That should be part of your choices.
Yeah. I think the biggest, we've talked before just about maybe, folks at the desk, right, not knowing how to offer this thing, right? And it's not necessarily a sales thing, but it's just making sure that people are aware of it is the biggest thing. Price it in, and have customers ask you questions about it. Because you can have all the coverage and legal mumbo jumbo in the world, but if you don't know how to position it, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good, right?
Absolutely true. And again, that's where pricing it in, I think, is definitely best practice, and making sure that it's offered to everybody. Just having a policy that everybody that comes in the door has it offered to them, and if they don't want it, that's fine. You can take it out, but it needs to be offered to 100% of your customers. The other thing is that covers you off from a legal standpoint, so that you don't have a customer that goes, well, I mean, I never got offered that. Had I been offered that, I would have taken advantage of it. You're protecting yourself as the renting company by making sure that everybody, gets offered this. Because then you've got a process where you can say to a judge, should somebody ever, decide that they want to, take you to court on it, hey, no, we offered and you declined. And I think that's a really good, again, from a risk management standpoint, it's just a really good step to take. And it doesn't cost you anything to offer it to people. Like, there's no cost associated. Hey, we're offering it to you as an additional benefit to you. If you don't want it, you don't have to take it, but we are making sure that it goes out there. And I think that's really, it's an easy way to generate revenue, make life easier for yourself in terms of if there's ever a loss, you've got your own insurance company dealing with it, and have it be a potential source of revenue for your for your business. So there's no good reason not to offer it to everybody, other than a little bit of fear and discomfort. Believe me, once you've done it a few times, that fear and discomfort goes away very, very quickly. And you'd be surprised at how many and which customers will take advantage of it if it's offered to them. Don't prejudge who's going to take it.
Yeah. I love that. You also just briefly touched on this a little bit. But one of the things, that we've barely talked about is just that this is another agreement, right? So let's say someone signs up with SCIS or another one, they need to also have a damage waiver that's written, right? Is that something that y'all can help them develop? I know not necessarily providing the entire document, but sort of guide them on best practices with developing their damage waiver policies and getting them close enough to, their insurance policy. Is there any sort of accelerators that you can talk about that help people get there?
And we can absolutely give you the benefit of our experience on that and give you templates and guidelines on that. We want to be very careful not to, be things that we're not. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV. But I did stay at the Holiday Inn Express lesson.
5% of the viewers probably got that joke, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was about to say the younger people aren't going to get that joke. But it wasn't even that funny anyhow. But dad jokes are all I have at this point in my life, right? But yeah, we would want to make sure that we can give you a starting point. We can give you best practices, but it is really the same as you have your contract written by your rental contract that is vetted by legal people. You want your waiver to be vetted by legal people as well. That really is an important step, and there's no way of getting around that. Yeah. If you want to actually make sure that you're doing it properly, it's just part of the process. You're not gonna take shortcuts on getting surgery. You're gonna go to a doctor for it and be in a proper facility. If you're doing your damage waiver, you need to talk to a lawyer and make sure that it's actually getting done properly. because they're the ones that, that understand it the best. We can help, like I said, give guidelines and best practices on that, even templates, but you really do need to get started.
Got it. All right. So hopefully we have everyone excited about insurance, excited about rental damage waiver programs. And it seems like a pretty good time to also let everyone know that Quipley and SCIS are going to be partnering together here. We actually have our first customer that we're getting launched. We won't name them because we haven't gotten their approval to be listed, but we have actually, Quipley has decided to create a partnership with SCIS to offer an integrated experience within Quipley. So if you're interested in that and you're a Quipley customer, I highly recommend you reach out so that we can provide you some more details. Damien's been awesome to work with. He's very responsive. That's something I always appreciate out of an insurance person. So a little bit of a shameless plug about a new program, but we're really excited about what this is going to do for us. I think we have a few more minutes left, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in before we go. But Damien, any closing remarks before we go, or things that you want to make sure that we cover off?
Yeah, I want to say how excited we are to be working with you guys at Quipley. We feel like the solution that we had done for our administrative stuff, we've got a web and all the rest of that stuff that, that makes it as easy as possible for rental companies to do business with us. But we're always looking for ways to make it even easier. And integrating with Quipley is going to make it even easier for the customers to do business and have seamless single entry coverage that stands behind their damage waiver. And so we're stoked to take our efficiency level on the admin side from high to even higher with Quipley. I think it's going to be fantastic for our shared customers, and I can't wait to roll it out.
Awesome. Very well said. Well, I think that about does it for us. Damien, thank you again for coming on the show. We're going to send out Damien's contact info to everybody, connect with him on LinkedIn. I don't know, Damien, you got a TikTok? Can they follow you on TikTok?
Nobody wants to see me on TikTok. Not even my kids want to see me on TikTok. It's not happening.
That's great. Well, everyone, thanks
for inviting me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with people about this.
Yeah. Like, as I've told people, you make insurance interesting. So, I think we all got a lot of free consulting today. Always learning from you. So, Damien, thanks for coming on. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.